Coming up next on the Zapata Brand Podcast, Boxing Edition. This man has been a fixture at ringside for nearly 4 decades. He has seen everything from Fan Man to the Bite Fight. And now he's Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for the UFC. George Zapata welcomes Marc Ratner to the Zapata Brand Podcast.
Well, fight fans, welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast, Boxing Edition, brought to you today by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, my next guest is a very influential man in the world of combat sports, an International Boxing Hall of Famer and the former Executive Director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and currently the VP of Regulatory Affairs for the UFC, someone who I've wanted and I have it on my bucket list to get him on the air, and now I do. Mr. Marc Ratner, how are you?
George, really good. I'm delighted to be on with you, and it was a very nice promo, probably too nice for me.
Well, Marc, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Ever since I was a kid fighting, in the amateur circuit coming up, I always wanted to have you work one of my fights. I've always liked the way you run a tight ship, and you were always fair, but you were firm, like Joe Cortez would always say. And I thought you were very fair, so I always wanted to do it. Now look at this. I got to meet you 2 weeks ago at the UFC headquarters, and now finally got you here.
Very good. My tour with you wasn't quite like what Dana's was, but you did pretty good there.
Well, it was good. But Marc, let me start right away. Who was Marc Ratner growing up?
One who loved sports, moved to Las Vegas, went to, with my family, grade school, middle school, high school, college in Reno, and ran track there, long jumped, and played a little college baseball as a freshman. When you get out of college, there's not much you can do. If you want to still be competitive, you can play slow pitch softball, play a little city league basketball. But I saw an ad that said you want to you yell at the referees when you go to a game or watch on TV. You think you can do better? Come to our officials meeting at Las Vegas High School. I did that, and have been involved in officiating ever since.
Now, the reason why I asked that is because, meeting you, you seem like a very laid-back guy. And to be such an influential part of a sport like boxing, it takes someone like a Dana White, like a Don King. You got to have that strong personality. You were quite the opposite. You were very, very astute. Very, if there's a stressful situation, you seem to calm the ship. Why boxing? Other than the fact that it's in Vegas and it's one of the sports there. Other than that.
I started going. I can remember going with my father to this ballpark, and I think we saw Archie Moore at the end of his career. And I used to go to a hotel casino called the Silver Slipper and watch these fights. And we just became a boxing fan. And for me, one of my best friends was his name was Chuck Minker. He was a judge with the commission, and then became the executive director. And when he became the executive director, I became an inspector in the back rooms. And that's my background. It was great for me to be working the back rooms, getting to know the fighters, and really from the regulatory part, there was my good learning part.
Now, when Chuck Baker, who has since passed, when you were with him, did he take you under his wing as a mentor through this process?
Yeah, more or less. He was the executive director. I was his chief inspector. We coached softball together, refereed basketball and football together. So he was one of my best friends till he passed away for over 20 years.
And then quickly, you rose to the ranks there, and I would see you numerous times at ringside as part of one of the boxing shows. You just be there. You're undeniably unrecognizable there. You were one of the guys that we always see at the shows. One of the things I've noticed there is why did they choose you as to take over Chuck Minker's job when you came in there? Were you anointed to be that one, or were you selected?
I was with the 5-member commission and with the governor. I was appointed in 2000, and '93, I believe.
Hmm.
Because maybe I was the chief inspector, they got to know me, and they thought I could handle it. I was helping Chuck when he was ill, and the commissioners appointed me.
Right. So how was that your time there with the Nevada State Athletic Commission overall in general?
It was the best of times. Besides having the fan man incident and the bike fight under my auspices, I also had a one other big controversy with Zab Judah and Floyd, and
Oh yeah.
had Uncle Roger jump in, had Zab's father jump in the ring,
Hmm.
but Floyd was calm and we got through it. But then I had some wild incidents in my time.
And let's get to some of those wildest incidents, if you would, because we spoke a little bit about it there, but we didn't have enough time. There's two big major ones. Obviously, the fan man, and obviously the bite fight. That those two were even casuals will know those incidents. Zab Judas was more of a could have got out of control pretty quickly because that was a lot of people jumping in there. But when that happened, take each one individually. You had to make a decision because arguably in both fights, the first bite fight and the fight with Fan Man, they could have arguably been stopped right there. You had to make a decision at that point. What's going through your mind as number one, a guy's flying in that no one's ever seen that before, and then Holyfield bouncing up and down saying he bit my ear. What was the difference between those two? And what was going through your mind? Was it because you're in front of millions of people, you have to make a decision like that?
Well, on the fan man, uh, I didn't know what happened. There's a sound in the crowd, uh, even at a boxing match where people are fighting behind you, and there's a different sound. And I felt there was something going on behind me, but I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't see the intruder, I call him, circling around the ring from way above. I was concentrating on Evander and Riddick. It was the seventh round, and out of the blue, as far as I was concerned, this guy comes into the ring with his fan contraption. His feet are over the ropes. He lands in Riddick Bowe's corner, and I believe the Reverend Farrakhan was in there as well as Mayor Barry from Washington D.C. And after he landed, it was some of the Nation of Islam guys were beating this guy up. They had these big brick cell phones back then, 1993, and they were beating the guy up. I give the utmost credit to, and I've talked with Michael many years over this. Michael Buffer, he was able to keep the crowd calm because nobody had seen something like this outdoors at Caesars. And my first thought after we had calmed down and the intruder was taken away was, does the fight go on or not with my commission? I went to each. I knew what one thing to do was go to the timekeeper and ask him how much time was left in the round, and that comes from my officiating background. So I went to the timekeeper, and I think there was a minute 30 left or something like that, and I went to each judge and said, look, I don't know if this fight's going to continue. Turn your scorecard over, make a note where you are, because if it does continue, we're going to have to score that round. And the delay, I believe, to my memory, was 21 minutes. And each judge had to judge that round. And one judge scored it for Evander, one for Bowe, one had it even. And here's the irony: if the judge who had scored it even had scored it for Riddick, then the result would have been a majority draw, and Riddick Bowe would have kept his title. Instead, he didn't, and Evander won the fight, and that changed the course of boxing history.
It really did, and to think about that, it wasn't as prominently looked over to say, hey, that round was a very pivotal round. And you did the right thing. You said to him, and maybe the judge did the right thing by just making it a draw and just saying, hey, this was a draw. That's what I thought. And 1-1. I don't know how that would pivot for either one, but my opinion, Holyfield was winning the fight, winning the round. I think it was turning around for him. So for me, it was a good call. The bite fight was a little different. That was more of That was more of like an athlete getting a little bit out of control. Something I've seen before of a bite, but not like that. That got a way out of control there with Mike.
Well, certainly a different situation. And this was the second fight. In the first fight, may he rest in peace. Mitch Halpern was the referee. Did a fabulous job. Has since then passed. Was appointed to do the second fight because the commission felt he did such a good job. Mike's people felt that there was some butts by Evander. Excuse me, let me get a little drink of water while we're talking.
Yeah, you're good.
I'll take this right now. Okay. Anyway, we changed. Mitch said, look, I don't want to be the center of any controversy. I will not referee the fight.
Okay.
And that was a $10,000 payday. This was 1997. So that's
they got $10,000 to referee a fight?
Mills Lane refereed that fight and got $10,000.
Wow.
And most referees to this day, now some of the Saudi Arabia fights, they're probably getting now. But that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever, 30
Holy
years
cow.
ago. And so Mitch gave that up. He made the right decision. We discussed it. And Mills becomes the referee. And the first two rounds are good rounds. Mike, they're pretty close. And in the third round, I didn't see it happen at that time, but as you mentioned earlier, Evander is just jumping up and down. I thought that Mike maybe had kneed him in the cup, and the cup had pinched him or something. Something happened. I did not know. Mm-hmm. And then he points to his ear, and referee Mills brings him over to the corner, and he calls me up to the apron. And that's one of the pictures you saw in my office. And he says, he bid him, I'm gonna disqualify him. And as an official, one of the first things you always ask the other officials, are you sure you want to DQ him? And that was just I haven't thought about anything but that. I didn't know exactly what happened. I wanted to make sure Mills understood what he was saying. And he said, let's bring the doctor up. It's Dr. Flip Pomansky. He came up, and Mills asked him, could he continue? Doctor looked at his ear. He said, yes, he can continue. And then Mike did it again, and obviously the fight was over. The big question that I've always asked myself throughout the years, if Mike would have knocked out Evander after the first bite, it would have been on me. And you certainly wouldn't be talking to me today. That would have been the end of my career, I really believe. And I think I did right from the officiating standpoint. I probably would do it again in the same circumstances, which would be hopefully I would never see that again. But that's why I did it. And I've talked to Evander since then. And certainly I see Mike a lot. He's a big MMA fan as well. And we had to fine him $3 million for that.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
And that's what you had to set the fine, correct?
The commission. And,
right.
And the only thing I told his people, and that was Rory Holloway and John
Horn.
John Horn. Hey, we're holding his purse. We're going to have hearings, and we did. The commission decided to take $3 million. It went to the general fund of the state of Nevada, and revoked Mike's license for a year, which meant he couldn't fight anywhere in the world for a year. And then he had a hearing, and he came back, and he was allowed to fight again.
Right, and there's 2 points on that I want to make. Number one, when that happened, and you said that you made that decision, and I went up to Mills and asked him and said, "Hey, are you sure?" That shows the leadership that you had under that kind of pressure. That is a big time fight. When your referee's getting 10 grand, that is a huge, massive fight. It's only gone 3 rounds. So at that point, you're making a decision on a split moment to say you want, and you give them the opportunity. So I've noticed that. Number 2, that is one of the reasons why I believe you were chosen to be the VP of Regulatory Affairs for the UFC because of your leadership. So I kind of want to transfer into that a little bit. Why did you leave the Nevada State Athletic Commission?
During my time as a director, Lorenzo Fertitta was one of the commissioners.
Okay.
And so I had worked with him previously, and he called me up one day, and this was in 2005. That stuff I can remember pretty clearly, and said, "Let's go have breakfast." I thought he wanted to talk about rules, about changing some stuff. We had put the unified rules in effect, and I thought maybe he wanted to make some changes, and we just talked. Big football fan. I talked football with him, and the son was playing high school football, so I knew the family. I actually refereed in my referee career Lorenzo in high school, so we went back a long ways.
Did you throw any flags? Did you throw any flags?
In fact, his brother Frank told me I was a bad referee. I remember right off. But regardless, so we had this breakfast, and he mentioned, he said, "You ever thought about leaving the athletic commission?" I said, "No, I had the best regulatory job in the world. All these great fights and being involved, and I loved it." And that's the way we left off. I didn't think anything more of it. That was in like maybe Thanksgiving time. And he said, "Well, we'll go have breakfast before Christmas." And we did it again. And once again, he said, "I might have something for you in the future." And so I said, "Well, we got, after the first year, we'll talk again." And this time, the way I say it, the salesman was Lorenzo, but he brought the closer in. Dana came to breakfast with us. and we didn't talk about traveling. We didn't talk about financial. We talked about growing the sport. He said, "You get it. Maybe you can help us get regulated in more places." At that time, I think the UFC was legal in around 20 states. Mm-hmm. Like I said, this is back in 2005, 2006. And so we said, "Think about it. We would like you to come to work for us." And I think maybe in March of 2006, I got a call from Lorenzo. He said, "Are you coming or not?" And I said, "All right, I'm going to discuss it with my wife. Give me a couple weeks." And I made that decision. It was really hard for me. And I said, "Okay, I'll come." And they said, "Well, when can you come?" I said, I got a De La Hoya fight, Cinco de Mayo. I think he's fighting Mayorga. I'll come right after that. I couldn't leave right in the middle. I think that was obviously Cinco de Mayo. The next Monday, I was over here. I was too dressed for this place right away. I think Dana said, "You can wear T-shirts here. You don't have to wear a button-down shirt." So that was May of '06. Here we are, 18 years later. I still love boxing. I still go to boxing whenever I can. I would have gone to Virgil Ortiz last week, but there was a Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame that I wanted to go to see some of my old people. But ironically, I would go see Canelo, but we have a big fight at the Sphere that night, so I'll see Canelo, and we're going to have a wonderful night that night.
Well, let me ask you, because you strike me as a guy. My wife is a teacher, okay? And Dana is similar to me. We're both entrepreneurs. I own my own bagel shop. We do things all in. We do things. You don't strike me as that person. You strike me more like my wife, where my wife's been the teacher for 30 years. She likes the steady income. She likes the benefits and what have you. So we going out on a limb there where you're working now for UFC, because there's nothing like getting a state job, honestly. If those checks bounce, we're all in trouble. So, but going into something that is, you don't have to, like you were saying, you don't have to dress up to work. You strike me as a guy who is very structured, and now you're going to be coming into a place where it's a different environment. But were you confident enough to say, I'm going to take, because Dana basically handed you the keys and say, go get this regulated in 50 states. Were you confident in what you could do?
Well, first of all, it was never only me. I mean, I had a lawyer with me when we were traveling around from state to state, and then Mike Mersch, one of my close friends, and certainly Dana Lorenzo came to a couple places, a former chief attorney, Kirk Hendrick. So there was a team.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back at it all, I went to state capitals I had only read about in geography books, and when you go to a lobby for a sport, you just can't walk into a legislator's office. You have to get lobbyists, you have to make appointments, and most legislators that we talked to in different states were a little bit older, didn't know anything about MMA, but their staffs did. And that was interesting because I'm dealing with a younger staff. And one by one, we were able to get the sport approved until New York. And it took us 8 years to even get a vote, which is really saying something. And the Speaker of the House would not get us a vote. He's passed away now. He actually was taken out of the New York Assembly for some malfeasance.
Has he
Not with us
passed?
as much as, but he did some things wrong, and they got rid of him. And
So
after
Silver,
those 8
Silver has
years,
passed?
the new speaker got involved, and we finally got a vote in 2016, passed 116 to 26, something like that, 114 to 26.
Mhm.
That was in 2016. The governor signed it, which allowed us to have our first fight at the Garden in November of 2016 with Eddie Alvarez and Conor McGregor. 20,000 people. I think we had like almost 20,000 at the weigh-in. It was the most emotional moment at the weigh-in for me to see that crowd after all those years. And we'll be back in New York in November.
What was so that obviously was the biggest obstacle, and as you were talking, I was saying I didn't know Silver had passed away. He was the one who was really blocking that situation there. But was that how was that moment when you finally said, "Oof, we got it," and if you officially got there? You said it was an emotional one for you. That being the hardest obstacle, was that really the high point of when you said, "Okay, I did it"?
At that moment, it was. Once we got the vote, we were in Albany, and I know we had a champagne toast that night with our lobbyist. And when I was at the vote in the assembly, I got emotional there. The tears came a little bit because, it was an 8-year odyssey. But as I look back on it now, it's all fine, and we love going to New York. We've been all over the state, and I look forward to going back.
And a few more things, if I could. Do you have any regrets right now?
When you say regrets, going back to the fan man, as I was going to just real quickly. I made a mistake, I believe, or not a regret as much. And I told this to Evander. I should have sent them back to the dressing rooms with this 21-minute delay. It was cold that night, and that part I just didn't know if the fight would go on, so we kept them there.
Okay.
But regrets, no, not really. I love coming to work every day. I love being involved, and I still look forward to everything.
And one thing I want to bring up before we go to the Sphere event that you're having coming up there September 14th. When I came into the UFC headquarters there, here's what I noted and this comes from you all the way up to Dana. Number one, you came out, you greeted me and Kevin, and everyone there is almost like they're very inviting. And that says a lot about your culture there that you have at UFC. But even when you came out, you showed me around, you showed me your office, you showed me the other things there. What I noticed too was at the performance, the PI, it is immaculately clean. It is an immaculate facility. You have the top of the line stuff there. Is that all a part of a team to get as many fighters as you can to train there, or no? Because some people aren't they're gonna stay with their trainers, but that place is the most magnificent facility I've ever seen in my entire life, right down to the octagons that you could see the sparring sessions behind a curtain on a big screen.
No, that is a fabulous facility for the fighters. Uh, we have people training there on a daily basis. If we have a big fight on the weekend at the Apex or something, there's a lot of fighters here. We have at our Apex facility across the street. Um, we also have a lot of equipment over there that so we don't have the opponents at the same time in the facility. But it really is an important part. We've opened up a performance institute in Shanghai as well as Mexico City, and we could do another one maybe somewhere in Europe. But it builds the brand, and it's very, very important. And the only inventory we have are fighters. So we have physical therapists, we have dietitians, we have everything that they need to become better.
Well, let's turn our attention to September 14th, 2024. You guys will go to the Sphere, UFC Noche. What kind of event is this going to be, and is this a one-off?
From everything I've heard, it is a one-off. It's a huge night in town here because, as I said, you have Canelo fighting as well as our show, and it's Mexican Independence Day, so it's going to be wild here, and the Sphere is going to be it's going to be magnificent. I went to see U2 there. I also went to see a group called Fish. I had a great time in the Sphere. It's just, from a visual standpoint, just remarkable. Even from the outside, they show things that are amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing how the cage and the octagon fits in there, how we structure it. We're working on it every day. It's less than a month away, and they have a model here that I have not seen. Dana's keeping it completely under wraps from the employees as well as anybody else. And yeah, I can't wait.
Well, 20 million does get you a lot. And he's Dana's pumped 20 million into this event so far. It could exceed that. Who knows with the way that's going. But going to U2 and Fish and seeing them too, why is it, what is like sets it apart? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because I'm not so sure what the Sphere is all about, how it would be different than just going to a regular event. Is there something that sets it apart from a regular arena?
No, it's unlike any arena. It's probably 180 degrees, and then you're looking at this screen that's 180 degrees. So it's a 360 degree circle, but only half of it you can see, and there's stuff on the screen that is so unbelievable that you feel like you're outside or on an island. I mean, it's just
oh boy,
it's 22nd century or something. I mean, it's remarkable. You can't really describe it, but it's very special, and the sound system is unbelievable, and for like U2, you can get you can see them, you can hear them, but no matter what, when they have the close-ups on this hemisphere or the semicircle, it's unbelievable. You can see every bit of them, and it's yeah. I'm just looking forward to see it from a fighting aspect. Like we said, it's a one-off. So
yeah, it's definitely going to be something to behold that night. The traffic is going to be terrible. Edgar Berlanga, Canelo, and then UFC Noche that same night. Probably not Canelo's best move, but he did go with that. He always fights on Mexican Independence Day, so he wanted to go with it. One final question before you go, and I know it is extremely hard for you to say, but so I'm going to ask you about it in a boxing sense. So I'll leave out MMA because you're still closely tied with MMA. You work for UFC. Who was ultimately your favorite fighter for you to watch and to be around?
Well, I have this long history. One of my favorite fighters that people don't talk about enough is Salvador Sanchez. He passed away, I think, at 23 in a motorcycle wreck. But one of the great Mexican fighters. So so that goes back a long ways. I was a Ray Robinson fan for sure. It's pretty hard to say that anybody could say anything bad about Ali as a fighter. In the last 20 years, I used to call him Pretty Boy. Money Floyd is one of the best defensive fighters, let alone offensive. So he's very special. So those are my favorite. I was a Sonny Liston fan too.
Oh, were you really?
There's something about him I liked. I got his autograph at one of the hotels. He was barely able to write. It took him, it seemed to me, 5 minutes to write his name. And after that, the next time I saw him, he had mimeographed autographs. So I go back to those fights.
Wow, so you certainly have a long history and well-respected enough to put you in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. You're the VP of Regulatory Affairs. You've done so much in the sport of boxing, and now transcending into MMA, getting it legalized in all 50 states. You know, Marc, this has been an absolute honor. It's something that I've looked forward to. I've had it on my bucket list. It's one more name I could take off that bucket list, but hopefully this will be a more regular thing that you could come on when you got fights coming up and you want to present some stuff here on the Zapata brand if you could.
No, and there's a little buzz on my computer somehow with my speaker, so I missed part at the end.
What I said was, this was one of the names on my bucket list that I've taken off now, but I still want to have you come back when the events at UFC are happening. You come in, discuss a little bit about the events and the new things going on with the UFC, if you could.
I'll be glad to come on again, and after the Spear Show, we can talk again. And your man Kevin will be there, and
yeah,
one of my favorite guys in the whole world. So I appreciate being on with you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you, Kevin introducing me, he knew I wanted to meet you, and he went out of his way to get that. And again, the hospitality you guys showed me was unbelievable. And we'll be out there. I'll be out there. You know, I won some money there last time, so maybe I'll be out more than you think. And I'll definitely get a chance to sit down with Dan and you.
Well, thank you, and I'll see you again.
We will. Thanks, Marc. Appreciate it.
Okay, so long.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.